Hi. It's not as bright up here as what it looks from down there. Right. So, my name's Tarsha Finney. As Nicole said, I'm the director of an event called Index, which is the end-of-year show for the School of Architecture, students of the School of Architecture at UTS. And I'm going to talk to you, I've been asked to talk to you about this event tonight. For the last few years we've been doing this, we've taken it off campus from the School of Architecture, and we've been using some space that's owned by Frasers, the property developers that are doing a large site opposite UTS on Broadway. And I want to speak to you about what's involved in that, of sort of going out of the institution, moving off campus. I want to talk to you about risk, about temporality, about expectation and managing our own expectations. And then also how we sort of project what's possible in the city. I want to talk to you about this. And the argument I want to make to you just really quickly before I talk about Index is something to do with sustainability. And this is a quote from an exhibition that's just been on at the Barbican in London of OMA's work, and it's an appropriation by the curator's rota of some of their work. And I want to read out to you that sustainability is a stealth laundering of luxury. Its role is to minimise the shame of consumption. The sustainable exists in a parasitic codependency with overdose, and it's a self-righteous crime. And what's important to me about that is I don't think we can answer the problems of sustainability in a city like Sydney at the scale of the city of Sydney. We need to be thinking about this, the metropolitan regional scale of Sydney. And what I want to show to you next is that if we're serious about addressing the twin issues of climate change and population, then we need to deal with things like public transport. Shanghai has built 434 kilometres of new railway public transport that moves 7.5 million people a day since 1995. And we, in that period, have built 23 kilometres. Today there was figures announced that said that there's a 44% difference in infant mortality between the western suburbs of Sydney and the eastern suburbs. And I think that's about an equity of access to resources. And these are the things we need to address. But, you know, Index is not going to address that, but I'll tell you about Index. Index is the end-of-year School of Architecture graduation show. Historically, we've had it in the School of Architecture itself, and it's been a very formal space. We've used these very beautiful UTS gallery spaces. It was a very highly curated show. And in 2009, we had a very big party afterwards. You'll see some images of that in a minute. And the UTS security called the City of Sydney Police, and they shut us down at about 1 a.m. There were 700 kids on the dance floor. I won't explain to you like how many people in this image are actually faculty and how many are staff. It's kind of embarrassing. But we were kind of asked to leave campus, and we needed to find somewhere else to go. And it turned out that Frasers, the developers, had some space on the other side of Broadway on Kensington Street. So after a bit of hustling initially, talking to the developer, talking to the real estate agent that represents them, we got a short-term lease for number 50 Kensington Street, where we had the 2010 show. And this was the first year that we kind of began to think about what it was on the occasion of exhibiting student work that might allow us to think differently and act differently in the city. So the first show involved about a crowd of about 1,000 people in a couple of different spaces and shutting the street with City of Sydney. We then negotiated a longer lease for the rest of the year, and we started using the shed as a materials fabrication workshop where we had film nights and public lectures and things like that. In 2010, we were able to, this is the 2010 show, so it's great to see a whole lot of my students here in the audience, students that sort of started to think about what the consequences of turfing a street like this would be, of drinking in the street and things like that. In 2011, once we started to realise what we were onto, we really began to negotiating much harder with other members of the street. So we ended up with 5 spaces and 6 curators. We ended up with additional bar spaces. We worked out this very clever mechanism with the City of Sydney and the Redfern Police, whereby we were able to drink in the street as long as we gave the alcohol away, and we gave it away on private property, which essentially freed us up to do a whole lot of things that no one's been able to do before. So after strategising this event at a large scale through the city, we started to see what its real potential is. To demonstrate, I think, as architects and as urbanists, what's possible just for one night. And this is where the real value for us of Index is. So we use number 42 Kensington Street. We use a car park that's owned by a completely different owner for some of our bar spaces. We started to work with scale, with different points of visibility, with different public lectures during the night, DJs on the corner, shutting the street down. We had 5 different spaces that were curated by 6 people, so that we dragged a higher and higher critical mass into the event itself, which means that we're building a critical mass around the school and a critical mass around what we understand ourselves to be doing. And always what we've been trying to do is use minimal materials, minimal expense. We do all the fundraising. The fundraising's doubled every year since I took it over in 2009, which both demonstrates that people will support things that they believe in, but will also are really interested in engaging in the city and really understand this idea of what it's possible to leverage off on the occasion of an exhibition of this scale. So we also like to add intellectual content. So we had Charles Renfro from Dilla Scofidio Renfro in New York, the architects of the High Line, come out and speak to us about this idea of temporality in cities. So really the issue for us has been about how to stand outside of the institution as a school and take risks. To understand our own temporality, we have to give the space up in June. So after developing this for 2 years, we've got to give it up. So I'm like madly hustling out in the street at the moment trying to find a space for this December, if anyone knows of a warehouse we might use. And I think that's the message that I want to leave with you, is that there's nothing that we can do better as occupants of the street at this scale than is to show other people how to do things.